Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Cioffi on this Tuesday. Not going to have a lot of time for a chat today, unfortunately, but we're going to run through the weather here quickly to show you what's going on. And, of course, we have Tropical Storm Franklin, which is now right over the Yucatan Peninsula. It looks like it's a little bit more than halfway across, and will be emerging over the open waters of the southwestern Gulf in the Bay of Campeche sometime this evening, and at which point, with water temperatures down here in the upper 80s, it should begin to strengthen again. However, there are some indications that there might be some northerly shear that will get involved and bring in a little dry air into this as it approaches the coast of Mexico on the other side during the later Wednesday and Wednesday night, and that might keep this from becoming a hurricane. We'll see. You know, one of the toughest parts with regards to hurricane forecasting is intensity, trying to figure that out because of all the volatility and small scale features that show up at the last minute that affect strength. And we'll see if it plays out here. It still has a very well-defined circulation and a very tight core, so it's holding together fairly well. This land area in the Yucatan is fairly flat, so weakening is going to be slow rather than rapid, and again, as the core moves out, it will probably strengthen again. And looking at the forecast model tracks, you know, pretty much all tightly clustered with a westward component of motion. It's down south of 20 degrees north where the center is, and if it stays more along, say, under 20, it's going to have less water to pass over, but the models seem to want to kind of keep nudging it up a little more northwest, at least initially, before turning it more to the west over time. So we'll see how this progresses as we go forward. Now, looking at the water vapor imagery, we have Franklin here, and we have the tropical wave. Let's see, it's just gotten a little stuck here on the loop. Let me see if I can refresh it. No problem there with the hurricane, the data source. But this is that giant upper low, and here's that tropical wave that seems to be around forever now in the middle of the Atlantic. Convection has formed again, but it comes and goes because of the impact of the upper low and the dry air that's around it. Now, this upper low is forecast to move southwestward into the Caribbean Sea, and once that happens, the conditions over the Atlantic in this area are going to improve. So when the wave gets there, probably closer to the end of the week and into the weekend, conditions are going to be favorable for this system to organize. The question is whether it will or whether it won't, and we're going to take a look at that. Let me just backtrack first. We'll pull up 99L's model guidance. There's only a limited amount of hurricane models that they're running, but they all track it west, northwest, or northwest, and then whatever is there, be it just the wave itself or a remnant system of some kind, winds up turning to the northeast, which, you know, makes sense given the upper air pattern that we have. And I'll show you that right here. So even if a system does develop here, the upper air pattern would suggest that it would stay out to sea. And here's our trough in the east as it lifts out. You can see Franklin right down here that the GFS has disappeared. And by the way, the GFS doesn't do anything with this. The European has now done it for a couple of runs in a row. It does show some sign of it here Friday night, early Saturday morning, but then it kind of loses it. But you can see this next trough is swinging away. There we go. So here's the next trough that's swinging around, and you can see the tilt of that trough is northeast southwest. So the upper air winds are shape up this way, where they're blowing basically from west to east along the east coast. Here's the Atlantic ridge. So anything, if it does survive, is going to wind up recurving around to the northeast. At least that's the way the models are playing this out, and I don't see anything that argues against it at this point. You really would need this trough in order for it to be any kind of threat to the East Coast, you really need the trough to dig down and create a southerly flow along the East Coast. And we just don't have that, particularly because the model is bringing in a trough into the west and pushing the ridge up into the plains. So there's no room in the atmosphere. You got to have room, and there's no room. That trough swings through, so we move into next week, and here comes the next trough, which it moves eastward and then weakens. Model still kind of wants to hint at, some ridging, but the ridge in the east and over the southern part of the United States is kind of on the flat side. So it'll probably put us on the edge of some heat toward the end of the period. But again, it's the GFS has been doing this for a number of days, and it seems that as we get closer in time, another trough in the northern stream magically appears. You can see there's a pretty busy looking vortex up here in northwest Canada, so who knows whether that's even there or whether it winds up sending something and moving it along. So we're going to just continue to keep an open mind with regards to this. I'm going to show you the European and what the European did last night, and I'll get a closer view of it on this map. Let's pull that up, and we'll go back. We will start initially, and the European has the old front here stalled out, and another wave develops on it off the Carolina coast Wednesday night and goes out underneath. And here's the system here's the tropical system that shows up Friday evening east of the Bahamas. It develops it into a tropical storm and maybe a little bit stronger than that. Maybe even gets it to a minimal hurricane. I don't know. But then it recurves out to the northeast, which would make sense given the trough. If we look at the upper air flow on this, the European actually has a fairly deep upper trough that's swinging down and around. But again, the flow is, because it's a little deeper, it's a little bit more west-southwest, but it's still west-southwest. So anything that's down there is going to recurve into the westerlies and move out to sea. You would, again, need to have a trough that looks more like this, okay? That's when you bring systems down here up the East Coast. You don't have that, at least on these model runs. And the European in the long range, that's a pretty impressive trough that's swinging around. Look how far down the westerly winds go, all the way into northern Florida. And, one of the things that the European's doing that the GFS is not doing is that and this is really interesting that what it's showing, there's an upper low that's in northwestern Labrador that it actually drops south and then southwestward. It did this yesterday and it did it again last night. So it leaves a fairly deep trough here in the east at day 10. I'm going to be curious to see if this is real, because that kind of changes the profile a little bit on the East Coast in the longer term, showing a deep trough that wants to hang around in the east. That'll be something to pay attention to, perhaps going forward. Your ridge out in the Atlantic is still there. You've got some energy that comes into the west, and a ridge that's popping up in the Dakotas up through Montana up into south central Canada there. So this is a bit more of an interesting outlook and an interesting dilemma. Here's the GFS for the same time frame. Here's the Canadian for the same time frame. Canadian's a little bit more like the European, but it's much further east. The European wants to have this upper low drop southwestward. You don't see that happen too often. So we'll pay attention to today's run to see if that is something that is real on that model's part. Okay, not much in the way of weather going on today, and we'll run through this. And here's our front to our south. The GFS doesn't really do too much with the wave that the European indicates is going to develop. And just to be fair, the European, was a little overzealous the last week or so with a couple of weather systems, including the one last night, bringing it too far north and west. So it might be guilty of the same thing again. Going into the weekend, that next front approaches, so we'll probably get into the chance for some showers and thunderstorms, somewhat on Saturday and a little bit more on Sunday. It looks like a little more widespread activity possible for Sunday. And this high drops down out of the plains and then swings into the east. And here's that European stalling that front out. So we're going to have to be a little careful to see where this all is going to go. Eventually, the high does build in on the GFS and moves on out. And then we have the next weather system that follows as we move into day 11 and 12. And then that goes by. Another high builds in. And again, through this period, as we've been indicating, it doesn't look overly warm. And it certainly does not look like we have anything that could produce heat wave conditions here in the east going into the middle part of the month. And, of course, as we get deeper and deeper into August, particularly for the Northeast, 90-degree days become a little bit harder to achieve. So at least the first part of this month of August is starting out a little bit on the cool side and certainly lacking the summertime heat and humidity that we can often see this time of year. Okay, folks, got to go. A lot to do today, and I'm going to schedule another live stream. Probably not till tomorrow, but I'll see how my schedule plays out later today. Maybe I'll sneak one in very late tonight. If anyone's around, we'll do a little chatting. Otherwise, have a great rest of your Tuesday. By the way, skies are very slow to clear out today. As you can see, we still have a lot of clouds that extend from New England on south into the mid-Atlantic. The clearing line is starting to make some progress across Pennsylvania and in through southeastern New York, but we still got a little bit more work to do. Should see improving sky conditions as we go through the afternoon and evening, and all the rain on the radar is offshore, so we don't have any issues from that. All right, folks, have a great day, and we'll talk to you a little bit later.